President Trump going after Bob Mueller just a day after Mueller spoke publicly about his report for the first time. We're going to fact check the president, and trust us, it kept us busy. Then Senator Chris Murphy, he will join us to weigh in on all the latest developments when it comes to the Russia probe. The Democrat from Connecticut, he sits on the Foreign Relations Committee, so he'll have a lot to say about Russia meddling in our election. Then the head of the National Organization for Women now, she will discuss the latest assault on a woman's right to choose. And even more states now are passing even stricter abortion plans. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Well, it didn't take long for our president to respond to Robert Mueller. He went on another rambling rant in front of reporters this morning. And of course, Donald Trump being Donald Trump, he had a whole lot of things that just frankly were not true and outright lies. So to fact check, let's bring in our senior political correspondent who once again drew the short straw, Andrew Whitman. This is becoming all too common here, Andrew, but he says something and then seemingly more of the content than was said was not true than was.
Yeah, and once again, it becomes a question of, was this just Donald Trump unleashed and he let his inner child out, or was this all spin for our benefit? But let's get right to it. The president's first comment was one of his greatest hits.
There's no obstruction. You see what we're saying. There's no obstruction. There's no collusion. There's no nothing.
Not so much on the no obstruction. Here's Mueller from yesterday.
If we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so.
So strike one. Trump also spent a lot of time this morning attacking Mueller himself, his team, and his investigation. Here's a morsel.
Despite $40 million, 18 Trump haters, including people that work for Hillary Clinton and some of the worst human beings on earth, they got nothing.
Lots of lies to unpack in that one. First of all, the Mueller investigation did not cost $40 million. It cost 12. Justice spent another $13 million directly investigating Russia and Russian interference, which began before Mueller and would have happened if Mueller had never been appointed. As for Mueller's team, 13 of the 18 members are registered Democrats, though there's no indication that impacted their work. Mueller himself is a Republican. No members of the team worked for Hillary Clinton, and all 18 are widely respected experts in their fields. And as to the claim that the investigation, as the president said, got nothing, well, it got 5 people who worked directly for Mr. Trump, either indicted, convicted, or admitting their own guilt, plus 4 other people that we know of. On top of that, 13 Russian nationals, 3 Russian companies, and 12 Russian GRU officers. That, Mr. President, ain't nothing. Next up, investigating the investigators.
Why didn't he investigate Strzok and Page and McCabe and Comey and all the lies and Brennan and the lies?
Well, Mueller didn't investigate any of those people because he was investigating Russian interference and possible obstruction, not the genesis of the investigation. And what's more, given that list of indictments, guilty verdicts, and guilty pleas I went through earlier, Mueller clearly found quite a bit. Finally, the president tried to make himself a hero and spin himself as the paragon of truth and justice.
I will consider what's happening now to be one of my greatest achievements, exposing this corruption. I've exposed corruption like nobody knew existed.
No, sir, you haven't. You've gotten your attorney general to launch an investigation that most experts think is unwarranted and uncalled for. Some of those people on your screen have faced internal Justice Department discipline, but no charges, no indictments, no guilty pleas, unlike the people snagged by the Mueller investigation. Rich?
This assault, this daily fire hose of all this that you have to debunk and everything else, it just muddies it. But he even, at one point, he claimed that Mueller had a personal agenda against him because they had a business deal gone bad. No, Mueller was a member of a country club and he never joined. He had a down payment that he wanted back to go somewhere else. That's not what the president alluded to today. I mean,
Trump's approach on this reminds me of how you test if spaghetti's done. Just throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. Whatever he can get to stick will reverberate in conservative media and becomes their truth.
Clearly, though, Andrew, between this, there was also a tweet storm where he acknowledged initially that the Russians helped him get elected. He then said he never said it, even though it was in black and white there in a tweet. This clearly has rattled him.
Something clearly has him bothered, whether he thinks it's going to hurt him with his base or hurt him with voters or maybe actually get to impeachment and investigation of people who are close to him. Something seems to be under his skin.
Andrew, thank you. Now, before I get to our first guest, I wanted to play for you how Bob Mueller ended his statement yesterday. Take a listen.
I will close by reiterating the central allegation of our indictments, that there were multiple, systematic efforts to interfere in our election. And that allegation deserves the attention of every American. Thank you. Thank you for being here today.
With that, I want to bring in my guest, Senator Chris Murphy. He joins us, the Democrat from Connecticut, serves in the Foreign Relations Committee. Senator, I know you've been vocal that here we are a year from the next general election, and we really have done little, if anything, to protect ourselves from another Russian hacking or name a foreign enemy that will be involved in our elections. Russians have both the means and also the intent to do this again, so it brings us to an uncomfortable question. Do you believe the administration has barely lifted a finger to make sure this doesn't happen again because they almost welcome the interference?
I mean, that seems pretty patently obvious to me. I mean, the president, invited the interference. He went on live TV in the middle of the 2016 election and asked the Russians to hack Hillary Clinton's emails. Within hours, they made their first attempt to hack into the DNC. The president has had the opportunity over and over again to champion funding that would stop these hacking attempts in the future. He refuses to do so. He has had the support of the Russians consistently in terms of his political agenda during the shutdown, the hashtag Schumer shutdown. Blaming the shutdown on the Democratic leader in the Senate was trending online because of Russian bots. So this has been a political alliance for a long time between the Russians and the Trump organization. Whether or not there's collusion and coordination, belies the fact that it exists, and I'm upset that the president doesn't take the long-term consequences of this kind of open foreign interference in presidential elections more seriously.
When you heard Mr. Mueller say, among other things, but specifically, that if he had confidence that Trump hadn't clearly committed a crime, he would have said so, what do you think he was telling Congress with that?
I was surprised by the tone and the strength of Mueller's remarks. I think it's pretty clear what he was telling Congress. I think he was telling Congress that he believes the president likely committed an obstruction of justice crime, but that he didn't make that finding in his report because he believes he doesn't have the ability to do something about it. Ultimately, it's up to Congress to use the impeachment process to render consequences for an obstruction of justice crime. And so I think the ante has been upped significantly for the House of Representatives. I think the first step is to make sure that the House and the Senate get the full extent of the report. Robert Mueller is making those findings based on a report that we haven't seen. We've only seen portions of that report, and so we need to get our hands on it before we make a decision. Some people have already made a decision to move forward on impeachment. I would rather have the full report in front of me.
At some point, though, a decision's got to be made, and to me, it seems that it's a choice between door number one or two. There have been a number of Democrats who said already, we've seen and we've heard from Mueller, that there was an impeachable offense that occurred. Other Democrats have said, let's wait and see, and also, this will never pass the Senate. This will be a Pyrrhic exercise, and we could be blamed politically here as just trying to score a partisan victory. Do you believe for you the decision as to whether or not impeachment should be pursued, is there a political component where you have to do the math, or is it strictly that this is a constitutional duty empowered to Congress to make the decision whether or not they believe an impeachable offense occurred or not?
Well, every prosecutor makes a decision as to whether to bring a case based on the likelihood of success. If you don't think you're going to get a conviction, you likely won't bring the case in the first place. So I think it's likely that the expectations of how the Senate would deal with impeachment would have an effect on the decision that the House makes. My position is that we need to get all the facts in front of us before we make that decision, and we don't have all of those facts in front of us. Remember, it's only been a matter of weeks since Mueller presented his report to Congress, and I think that we need to see all of the evidence before we make the decision. But you're right, we don't have months to make that determination. The House is going to have a difficult decision in front of them soon.
Senator, thank you for a couple minutes. Appreciate it.
Thanks, appreciate it.
All right, everybody, when we come back, first Mueller spoke, now Bill Barr's turn in the barrel. The Attorney General, he responded to Mueller, and as usual, things even more confusing than they were before. A former federal prosecutor will join us to try, I stress try, to hash it out.